the automation skills gap. More robots are on the way, and fleets flex their AI muscles. Pull up a chair and join us as the editors of DC Velocity discuss these stories, as well as news and supply chain trends on this week's Logistics Matters podcast. Hi, I'm Dave Maloney. I'm the Group Editorial Director at DC Velocity. Welcome. Logistics Matters is sponsored by Werner. In cross-border shipping, experience is everything. With more than 25 years of trusted expertise in Mexico, Werner moves your freight seamlessly across the border. Their bilingual teams handle the customs and compliance, so you don't have to. Get the reliability your supply chain deserves. Become a customer today at choosewerner.com. As usual, our DC Velocity senior editors Ben Ames and Victoria Kickham will be along to provide their insights into the top stories of this week. But to begin today, as labor becomes harder to find for our distribution and manufacturing facilities, companies are turning more and more to automation. This is National Robotics Week, when the industry celebrates the impacts that these mechanical workers are making on our operations. Yet there are still gaps remaining, as our guest explains today to Senior Editor Ben Ames. Ben?
Thanks, Dave. That's right. This is one of the major trends that we've been covering for some time now in the magazine, is the rising use of robotics across supply chain and logistics. But even as robots keep expanding rapidly across different industries, different applications, the rise of this new technology has come with some of its own challenges as companies learn how to work with them. In fact, our guest this week says that most of the workforce still lacks a clear understanding of how these systems work or where they create value. Here to talk about getting over that hurdle is Christelle Keefer, who's the Director of Training and Certifications at the Association for Advancing Automation. It's also called A3. Welcome, Christelle.
Thank you, Ben.
We're glad to have you with us. And just to start us off, maybe you could just give our listeners a quick description of what A3 does and what role it plays in this industry.
Yeah, so A3 is the leading trade association for automation. We have over 1,450 members, and our role is really to advance the industry across robotics, machine vision, motion control, and AI. And how do we do that? Well, we develop safety standards, and we bring companies together through networking, events, webinars, training. And one key event that I did want to mention that's coming up really soon is called Automate. It's our largest automation showcase in North America. Taking place June 22nd through 25th in Chicago. And the show is free to attend, and it really brings together the latest innovations and industry leaders. So a big focus for us at A3 is making sure people are prepared, not just with the technology, but also with the knowledge and skills to use it effectively, and having a strong network to support them throughout their automation experience. So I believe we're the bridge between technology and the people using it.
A critical bridge for sure, and that's really the topic of our conversation today. I know you've said that one of the trends that A3 sees is the increasing need for robotics knowledge, as you were saying, but that's expanding beyond just engineers. Why is that, and who else needs this knowledge?
Automation has moved from being a technical tool to a business tool. And, I believe if you work around a product, you really should understand the basics, even in a non-technical role, because it builds your credibility and trust. So you don't need deep expertise, but you should, and I believe, need context and confidence. So people should overall understand how their technology works, where it adds value, and how to make informed decisions. And that applies across the organization, from business leaders making investment decisions to operations teams working with automated systems to sales teams communicating the value, and even new hires entering these environments. I believe when people have that basic understanding, communication improves, decisions are clearer, and there's less hesitation around adopting the technology. So it really removes that barrier from people moving from the I don't understand this mentality to I'm comfortable and confident with it.
Makes sense. Are there any sort of particular areas where you see, of business where you see companies struggling to align some of those goals with the adoption of new automation?
Yeah, I think there's a gap where companies are developing and deploying robots before the workforce is prepared to operate, support, and even scale the system. So, that gap often shows up in onboarding, role-based training, and leadership readiness. And I think it's important to prepare the organization before bringing in the technology through communication, through planning and training, really being proactive ensures the technology is used efficiently and effectively. And automation doesn't fail because of technology. It really fails because of the adoption.
Gotcha. Wise words. So we've been talking sort of broadly about training and education. But, a robot is, to understate it, it's a complicated technical machine. So what is it when we talk about this education that professionals actually need to understand about robotics today?
Yeah, so to your point, Ben, robots are complex, but most professionals don't need to build or program them. What they need is context and a practical understanding of how robotics fits into real world systems. So it's really about understanding what robotics is, what robotics isn't, where it creates value, how systems work together, and the safety and workforce impact. So the goal isn't to turn everyone into an expert. It's to make them confident and capable so they can have better conversations, make better decisions, and not feel intimidated by the technology. So it's really less about depth and more about clarity.
Gotcha. Sounds like crucial things to know. But how can people best learn this information? I know you mentioned that your Automate trade show coming up, and also A3 has just launched an educational course to give professionals some of this foundation about robotics. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, I'm so excited. We recently launched our Introduction to Industrial Robotics course because we saw a gap where people needed a starting point that wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't tied to a specific vendor, and it reflected how robotics is used in the real world. So the audience is broad, including business leaders, operations teams, sales teams, new hires, educators, and students, which really reinforces that this knowledge isn't just for engineers anymore. Automation is accelerating across every industry, and the companies that succeed won't just be the ones who adopt the technology, they'll be the ones who prepare their people to use it. So our goal at A3 is to help companies build a workforce that can support and scale these technologies.
A very important goal for sure. We really appreciate your coming on the podcast this week to tell us about it. Thank you for being here, Christelle.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben.
Our guest this week has been Christelle Keefer from A3. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Christelle and Ben. Now let's take a look at some of the other supply chain news from the week. And Victoria, we just talked about robotics and the impacts they're making, and you have some numbers to back just how robots are being deployed these days.
Yeah, that's right. So we often talk about a robotic revolution in the magazine, and it's a very real thing, as Ben's conversation with Christelle just pointed out. But some new information from the International Federation of Robotics, or IFR, illustrates just how prevalent robots are in factories and industrial settings around the world. So the group released its World Robotics 2025 report this week, and it outlines the number of factory robots being used in various regions as compared to the local manufacturing workforce. So this is called robot density, and it's highest in Western Europe, where there are a record 267 robots per 10,000 employees in 2024, and that's the latest data that's available. That's an increase of 3% over the previous year.
Well, Victoria, that does sound like a lot of robots. How does the rest of the world stack up?
Well, North America came in second with 204 units per 10,000 employees, and Asia is third with 131 units. In North America, that was a 4% year-over-year increase, and in Asia, the increase was 11% year-over-year, so a lot being added. Now, broken down by country, things shift a bit. Korea has the highest robot density at 1,220 robots per 10,000 employees, and Singapore is second with 818. Germany ranks third with 449, and Japan is fourth with 446 units. Rounding out the top 10 countries are Sweden, Denmark, Slovenia, the United States, Taiwan, and Switzerland in that order. And again, we're talking here about robot density. So this is the use of robotics as measured against the workforce. But when you look at the sheer number of industrial robots in use today, China comes out on top. The country has around 2 million units, which is 4.5 times more than Japan, which has the second highest inventory. So a lot of robots over there. The report also found that more than half of all the robots installed worldwide in 2024 were deployed in China. And again, this is based on manufacturing or factory robots, but I think it really highlights the growing presence of robotics in the workplace in general. And the main goal of using all of this is to increase productivity and also to deal with labor challenges. And of course, we see that happening in warehouses and distribution centers as well.
Right, we do. And there are more robots being deployed every day. And I think we'll see a lot more, of course, deployed in the future, especially as their capabilities get even better.
Absolutely. They get better and better all the time.
Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome.
And Ben, it's not just in warehouses and manufacturing facilities where technology is being deployed. As you reported this week, there are new technologies being adopted also in the trucking sector.
Yeah, it's true. And we've been following trucking. Of course, it's critical to supply chain, to retail, to warehousing. But it's also been really going through a challenging period in trucking. They're in a 3+ year long freight recession. It's a cyclical business, of course, and freight hauling prices naturally rise or fall over time. But in this case, those prices have been in the dumps for much longer than usual. So it was interesting this week to see a report about the financial side of the trucking business. It came from TD Cowen, the banking and investment analysis firm. And they shared this week the results of their quarterly carrier survey. And it showed that a lot of the companies that operate those fleets are looking for some answers to this tough period in technology, and specifically artificial intelligence technology. So the survey found that more than a quarter, 26% of trucking carriers, said they'd be willing to use AI tools entirely instead of relying on human freight brokers. Another 40% of those carriers said they would also use AI tools, but they would use it for the less complex loads and turn to brokers for the more complex lanes, so do a mixed approach. And meanwhile, just about 28% said that they would always continue to use a human broker for all loads. So, definitely showing willingness to use this new technology as it begins to be available. But it's important to say it wasn't all bad news for those freight brokers. TD Cowen also asked those carriers why they would stick with human brokers instead of just computerized AI. And the top response they got was personal relationships. So TD Cowen said that's a really positive sign for brokers because that would be one of the hardest parts to simulate with automation.
So, and again, trucking firms are looking for answers so they can stay in business in a very tough cycle, as you talked about, this freight recession that's gone on for quite some time. Did the report say how they're doing overall?
Yeah. So, that there's rising optimism. The survey found, which is great to hear. Specifically, they found more optimism in the first quarter about potential future rate increases than in the previous quarter, which is Q4 of last year. More carriers also believe now that a recovery may have already begun. So we're in the early pages of that. But despite that optimism, there are challenges ahead for sure. The study said that improvements are coming, as mentioned in those beginning rate increases, more because of capacity exits. In other words, a shrinking pool of trucks available to haul loads instead of increasing demand. Also, TD Cowen said that inflation is starting to build and was starting to build even before the Iran war began on February 28th. In fact, we heard some new numbers. I think it's up to 3.4 just this morning. And that could even be accelerating since costs are rising for carriers. The survey showed that driver pay expectations in Q1 have risen to their highest levels since 2022. And also, as we've been covering, there's been a really large spike in diesel fuel prices. So carriers are really starting to see their costs continue to rise, even as they keep up that optimism.
Right, and I'm not sure those diesel prices are going to come down anytime soon. It's definitely rough out there in the transportation sectors. I don't think they're really going to have a quick turnaround that a lot of people are hoping for, at least not quite just yet.
It's going to take some time to fix this one. Yep.
I think so. Thank you, Ben. We encourage listeners to go to dcvelocity.com for more on these and other supply chain stories. Also, check out the podcast notes section for some direct links to read more about the topics that we discussed today. And we'd like to thank Christelle Keefer of the Association for Advancing Automation for being our guest. We welcome your comments on this topic and our other stories. You can email us at podcast@agilebme.com. We also encourage you to subscribe to Logistics Matters at your favorite podcast platform. Our new episodes are uploaded on Fridays. And a reminder that Logistics Matters is sponsored by Werner. In cross-border shipping, experience is everything. With more than 25 years of trusted expertise in Mexico, Werner moves your freight seamlessly across the border. Their bilingual teams handle the customs and compliance so you don't have to. Get the reliability your supply chain deserves. Become a customer today at choosewerner.com. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Logistics Matters. Be sure to join us. Until then, have a great week.